On March 2011, the east coast of Honshu, Japan's main island, experienced a perfect storm of 3 consecutive catastrophes. As you can see here, the seawall shielding the facility was built to withstand 7-meter waves, not the 14-meter waves that came crashing onto the shore. Not or because it is, TEDx talk at UC Irvine provides some interesting commentary on the civil engineering problems to blame, and what countries are doing to redesign certain elements of nuclear power plants, such as moving the diesel generators and water tanks for cooling above the reactors instead of below. Many people often look at Fukushima from a technical viewpoint, as I did when I first started researching this topic. Radiation, after all, is a scary and misunderstood thing, and we worry about its effects on humans, animals, the land, and the sea. And yet, to date, there have been no reported cases of radiation-related illness or death, other than from those of workers directly involved with containing the reactors. Instead, the real problems with Fukushima are much more consistent with natural disasters. Domestic upheaval, trauma and psychological distress, and loss of belonging. These are the challenges faced by Fukushima's Displaced. Fukushima Prefecture is located on the east coast north of Tokyo. It's a beautiful, fertile region populated with many small rural communities. Tokyo Electric Power Company operates 2 facilities here, the Daiichi plant and the Daini plant just south of it, a total of 11 reactors. 6 of these are at Daiichi. When the Great Japan earthquake occurred, these reactors did exactly what they were designed to do. They started to shut down. But these reactors were the kind that took a bit of time to do that. Backup diesel generators kicked in to keep the water pumps running until it was cool enough for the fuel cores to stop reacting. This would have all worked as planned if the earthquake had not caused a massive tsunami to breach the seawall and flood the basements where the diesel generators were. 1 of the reactors was offline for maintenance at the time, and 2 were unaffected. However, with the cooling system down, 3 of the reactors began to overheat. This was further complicated by the tsunami's impact on roads and traffic, which prevented water trucks from coming to the rescue. To prevent the cores from exploding, they began using seawater to control the temperature and venting excess heat and radiation into the air. Initially, they extended the original 3-kilometer precautionary area to 10 kilometers. But within 12 hours, they had extended it to 20 kilometers and then up to 30. Making matters worse, over the next 4 days were prevailing winds carrying radioactive rain northeast up to 40 kilometers. This entire area, encompassing dozens of towns and small cities, became the nuclear exclusion zone and saw the forced evacuation of over 100,000 people. That's about 0.08% of Japan's population, but represents a significant portion of agricultural production. Radiation levels measured here at the time reached 1,085 millirems per hour, compared to the safe individual limit of 100 millirems per year. Further controversy was raised when Tokyo Electric Power Company received permission from the government to start ejecting contaminated water into the Pacific. Radiation levels in the ocean measured then reached approximately 130,000 curies. Cold shutdown was eventually achieved by November 30th, 2011. By then, rural residents, particularly elderly, mothers, and youth, had been indefinitely separated from their lands, homes, and belongings. Connected to these were systems including local towns and cities, Tokyo Electric Power Company, marine life, and agriculture. In these initial 8 months, decisions and actions were made for survival. But now, 6 years later, the long game of repatriation and repair are taking its toll on the social and psychological state of the region. Underlying much of it is the silent and ambiguous threat of radiation. Its only visible evidence are thousands of bags of contaminated topsoil littering the otherwise idyllic countryside. Towns that have been declared safe are being rebuilt. But since radiation is invisible, repatriating residents to revive economy and assist with reconstruction has been challenging. In the most severely contaminated towns, such as Futaba and Itatemura, which are still restricted, only radiation meters reveal the dosages people are exposed to. Higher than normal, but still relatively low compared to sites like Chernobyl. For those whose homes are within the 20-kilometer no-entry zone, this is where it gets tricky. They can visit, but are not permitted to stay overnight. Since authorities still haven't been able to conclusively explain the effects of long-term low-dose radiation, evacuees return to see their living rooms and kitchens frozen in time, unable to reclaim anything out of fear and uncertainty. National Geographic has an insightful video that gives you a peek into some of these factors. While the work of physical restoration and decontamination has made significant progress, studies show that depression and distress continue to be undertreated problems across all of the displaced residents. Trauma from being forced to leave their homes, having nowhere else to go except shelters far away from the land of their ancestors, being separated from family members and loved ones, powerlessness and uncertainty, and the stigma that comes from popular misconceptions of radiation, leaving farmers unable to sell local products even though many are safe for consumption, and relocated children experiencing nuclear bullying from other communities. Although the plight of human stakeholders has been clearly documented, less frequently mentioned is the substantial population of rural animals and wildlife, most of which were left behind during the evacuation. The effects of low-dose radiation on these animals were studied without revealing evidence of severely harmful biological mutations. In a number of species, such as in bird feathers and cow fur, abnormal discoloration was a symptom, but levels of polonium-210 and cesium, the primary radioactive isotopes from the Daiichi discharges, measured in animals was not significantly higher. Rather, the cause for concern raised by pharma such as Naoto Matsumura is daily caretaking for their essential needs. Residents like Naoto have defied government restrictions into some of the no-entry zones at risk to their own safety to provide food and water for animals. In contrast, much has been sensationalized about the leaking of tritiated water into the Pacific, with activist groups and social media portraying the spread of contaminants all the way to the coasts of New Zealand and California. Studies on seawater and Pacific bluefin tuna, however, have shown these to contain only marginal traces of polonium-210 and cesium, too insignificant to be contributed to Fukushima Daiichi, and more indicative of overall increases in ocean radioactivity. Nevertheless, concern and controversy remain around the storage, recycling, and safe treatment of large volumes of water used to cool the Daiichi reactors. It shows the lack of scientific understanding about nuclear radiation by the general population and its incomplete representation in pop culture. Consequently, local fishing industries have similarly suffered economically from stigma. This research has been interpreted into a collection of high-level needs and organized into a quality function deployment stakeholder matrix. Stakeholders and systems have been weighted by importance based on initial understanding of their roles, and then given a high, medium, low impact against each need to determine their overall priority. Needs have been identified under the following categories: psychological and mental health, physical health, relocation, resettlement, and repatriation, communication, schools and education, ecological, agricultural, and economic. Although ecological needs have not been dismissed, there is a noticeable priority to solve problems contributing to psychological distress and mental health caused by displacement, separation, and lack of understanding around the safety and risks of radiation.